Well, Synod, we are coming to our penultimate item of a very long group of sessions. It is also the last time that I will be chairing at General Synod, so I really enjoyed that last ding of the bell. Order. I enjoyed that a little too much with the ding there. But I am absolutely delighted that this is the item that we will conclude with today, and welcome our esteemed guests. And I am sure you are as thrilled as I am to have them joining us and sharing with us today their voices. So for this item, we need, so we're doing items 26 and 27. Members need paper GS 2366. And I begin with inviting the Bishop of Portsmouth to introduce the presentation and our speakers.
Jonathan Frost, Portsmouth 032. Dear sisters and brothers, at the top of the bill, would you welcome children, young people and staff from Archbishop Holgate's school here in York and from the Archway Learning Trust in Nottingham. Synod, in July 2023, we passed a motion for greater engagement with the voice of children and young people. This was a two-part motion, which also called for further development work with young adults. That work needs to go on strongly in the future. Today's item concerns the first element of this, with further reporting to Synod on progress around the work with young adults coming to a future session. Before I move the motion, we have a presentation. This seeks to model some of the possible methods that Synod can deploy to create a space to hear and then act upon the voices of children and young people. For today's presentation, we've taken the strategic priority to grow younger and more diverse as an example area of focus. There'll be three inputs on this topic from young people. First, students from Archbishop Holgate's will present a range of survey and research data, some of which is gathered from our national younger leadership groups, which meet across the country. Then a video will showcase a range of examples of projects across the country where the church is growing younger and more diverse. And the question is asked of the children on the video, why they think this is happening. Third, we'll hear from students from the Archway Learning Trust about the growing importance of strategic partnerships between schools, churches and households through the Growing Faith Foundation's work, an item which points to the establishment of the new pilot commencing in the autumn, the Flourish network of worshipping communities in schools and colleges. Enough. Please, can we have the PowerPoint slides? Good, I think they're there. Can I hand over to Hannah and Benedict from Archbishop Holgate's?
One of the strategic aims of the Vision and Strategy team has been to look at ways to support the church to be younger and more diverse. In 2022, they undertook some research looking at churches with a flourishing children and young youth ministry. What they found that was, in every place, prayer, intentional prayer for children and young people, was a regular part of their church. Prioritise, resource, adapt and you make up the acronym of PRAY. Prioritise. This ministry was prioritised in time, money and resources. It was on the PCC agenda and was the priority of the church. Resource. Churches were intentionally praying, prioritising, and from this, discerning how to resource this ministry, whether it be a forest church or a new youth group. Adapt. Churches needed to be welcoming places for all, and churches adapted to become this. You. It was about the whole church, whether they are aged 95 and can pray, or 5 and can invite a friend to church. The team are pleased to report in 2023 they have seen green shoots of growth as they work with local churches, cathedrals, chaplaincies, church plants, and new communities in this space of growing younger and more diverse. A real positive sign is that the initial figures in the statistics for Mission 2023 show growth in terms of average weekly church attendance of adults at 5% and 6% for children and young people. Whereas the previous 2 years could be viewed as COVID bounce back, the 2023 figures suggest that more people are finding faith and joining their local church. For the first time since statistics have been measured, there is growth, and this could even be the start of a trend. Similarly, the preliminary child average Sunday attendance figure for 2023 is 1.9% above the pre-COVID trend prediction. School service attendance is almost back at the 2019 level.
The team are delighted with this growth, and while some of it is due to post-COVID bounce back, there is some real growth, with almost 10% of churches planting a new worshipping community in 2023. Some of the other possible factors for this growth include the missional energy that is happening from clergy and laity across the country, the Archbishop's Council focusing its attention consistently on doubling the number of children and young people, making it, as Archbishop Stephen described, the priority of priorities. Thirdly, the increased alignment of resources in this area and strategic mission and ministry investment in work with children and young people. There has also been significant focus on cultural change and what it means to grow younger and more diverse, and in strategic investment in diocese and partnerships. There has been greater storytelling about work with children and young people, which inspires possibilities. And finally, closer working within the national church institution teams, including between ministry, education, growing faith, communications, and racial justice, which is having an impact in supporting and enabling this local work at a diocesan and parish level. These very encouraging initial statistics will need further analysis to discover where and how church growth is occurring, so that this learning can then be shared across the whole church. But what does this mean in terms of development in the immediate future? Some of the ongoing work which will further develop what is already happening includes digital evangelism and discipleship through our partnership with The Way UK. A key focus here is to widen engagement with teenagers via social media. They currently have 4% of 13 to 17-year-olds in England following them. Flourish, an exciting new project to pilot new worshipping communities through school/church partnerships, which we'll touch on later in this presentation. The 30K project, which is piloting new ways to develop 30,000 new leaders of mission with children and young people, 90% of whom will be volunteers. And finally, developing the work agreed by the House of Bishops to aim for a flourishing children, youth, and families ministry within reach of every young person. This gives you a brief overview of the vision and strategy team's work and findings in relation to supporting the work of the whole church to becoming younger and more diverse. My classmates Isabel and Sam are now going to share some findings from a recent survey.
Young people's voices and views from the Church of England schools were collected from a survey sent to pupils who are currently or who have participated in the National Younger Leadership Groups, a group designed to hear the voices of young children and young people on the issues that matter to them, and through schools make it a part of the Archbishop Young Leaders Award program. There were 605 responses received, 78% of those secondary aged, and 12% from primary age students. The first question asked was, which of these ideas do you associate with church? These pupils were given multiple choice questions and asked to choose 3. The results are shown on the screen. Most of the results show a positive perception of church, with the top answer being welcoming, followed by holy, spiritual, and peaceful. On the opposite end, restrictive, scary, disapproving, and unfriendly made up 3% of the answers submitted. Pupils were then asked, if you were to describe your ideal church, what would it be like? As you can imagine, there were a wide range of responses, but common themes included welcoming to all, accepting, inclusive, friendly, loving, kind, reaching out to community, and helping others. One pupil said it would be friendly, supportive, welcoming, encouraging, acts like family, and a great safe space to go. Another said, a church where they understand young people and help them understand the Christian faith. And another described it as somewhere you can talk about anything and everything. You can worship in your own way, and it feels like home. The pupils were then asked to imagine the following scenario. Imagine all the churches disappear tomorrow. What difference would it make to you, your school community? Overwhelming 85% of pupils said it would make a difference to either one or all 3 aspects. Common themes in the responses included impact on Church of England schools, loss of community connection and friendship, upset and sadness, feelings of loss, confusion, and hopelessness, and loss of a meeting place. I'll just share some individual quotes. Many people would lose a purpose and a focus of their faith. We would lose a great source of community and togetherness. I would feel more lost with my purpose in life. And a church is a building, so it doesn't matter, as long as you're with other Christians, and that's a church.
For question 4, the vision for the local church being younger and more diverse was shared with pupils, and they were asked how far they agreed with each other on the following statements. Older people don't want children and young people in church. 62% of pupils disagreed or strongly disagreed with this statement. It is important to include children and young people, as we are the generation to help the church to flourish. 92% agreed with this statement. My local church is already great for children, young people, and families. 91% of pupils agreed with this statement. Children and young people should be included in the planning and ideas process to help the church with this vision. Again, the response to this statement was high in agreement at 91%. And finally, 89% agreed with the statement, giving children and young people opportunities to lead in church will help the church to flourish. Many activities take place in church to help pupils think about their faith. Pupils were asked to choose their top 3 from a list of 10. Prayer overwhelmingly featured as the top answer, followed by helping others, reading the Bible, and reflective times. What we have just shared with you is a small sample of pupils' views. In looking at ways to support the faith development of children and young people, the Growing Faith Foundation has supported a number of research projects to further aid understanding of growing faith in the intersections between households, schools, and churches. These are available individually to view on the Church of England website under Education and Schools, but also as a helpful digest. Having heard the voices of some of our children and young people in church schools, the Vision and Strategy team spoke to children and young people from several churches and with a flourishing under-18s ministry. And here's what they had to say.
What I enjoy about coming to church is seeing my friends and learning about Jesus. I think my favourite part of the service is the children's song.
I joined the church in 2022 because we came from South Africa. They were very welcoming, and I've been singing for about 2 years now. You learn different skills about like how to improve your voice, and you learn how like to sing properly, and you also learn about like Jesus and like God, so it's like two things at the same time. Every Sunday that you come, you better yourself in your singing and you better yourself in your knowledge of like Jesus and God.
I've invited lots of friends to the HB Youth. One reason is that I'd really like them to encounter Jesus, and I think that youth is a fun way and a good way for them to do that. On one hand, you have the Jesus part where you can really get to hear and feel the Holy Spirit, and on the other hand, you can do really fun experiences that you might not have anywhere else, and you can do it with your friends. I've invited around 25 kids. Not all of them came, but around 10, 11 came. And when they came, I just felt really happy because I knew that they'll get an experience of what it is like to worship and have fun at the same time.
Bible church was different to other churches because most churches, they don't really have like a kids service. You just stay for a bit of the normal service. But then in Bible church, you can stay in, you can like do action songs and things like that in Bible church. The biggest thing is that God and Jesus are always in my heart, and God is following me everywhere I go.
I like singing and dancing. I like the puppets. I like the jumping.
After a while, I really liked coming here, so I just thought, well, let's go here a lot with my brother. But I just thought, well, if I'm going to do this, then I might as well be baptised. I wanted to be a part of the church family.
My favourite thing about Minecraft Church is that how it's not like regular church and how kids get to go inside with knowing that they're going to be playing games but also learning something from it.
My favourite thing about Minecraft Church is the community and the people who are there and how they're so nice and help each other.
My favourite thing is that you learn a lot about like God and you do scripture. You also get to hang out and like chat with friends as well, so it's like a perfect mix of like fun and scripture.
I like how we come in and we get to play a bit before we talk about things about the Bible and about God.
But when I go to school, I've got like exams to do and stuff like that, and just knowing there's someone there that I can go to outside of school to talk to and to like spend time with or just to pray in general.
It's had such a big impact in like helping me grow in my relationship with God, but also just giving me like a community of Christians that I can turn to.
Being baptised, it didn't feel like what I thought it was going to feel like. It felt more real to me, more personal, more like Jesus met me right there in the water.
Now I'd like to welcome students from Archway to do the next presentation.
If I am the future of the church, then what am I today? If I am left out today, then what will I be tomorrow?
Shh! The adults are speaking.
Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven.
As a growing faith hub in Nottingham, our schools have partnered with local churches to engage in formational discipleship, finding new ways to engage young people in their faith and new creative opportunities for them to learn about Jesus. We believe the best way to do this is by building strong and long-term partnerships with Jesus at the centre.
At Newcote Primary Academy, we are fortunate enough to have an after-school church that runs in school on a Wednesday. The idea behind it is to help families connect with home, school and church better.
Our school vision is to strive for life in all its fullness
This is based off the verse from John chapter 10, verse 10. I have come to give you life, life in all its fullness. We partner with our local parish church, Woven St. Margaret's, to put on an after-school church for all the family. We want to see lots of families spending time together, as it isn't always easy for us to do this. For example, I come to after-school church with my stepdad Dean. This gives us the chance to talk, the chance to spend time together and learn about God. I really love after-school church because it is fun. We get to spend time with God and praise Him through worship songs and activities. God is a good person. All the things that God is and does are great. So I want to worship Him. We now listen to worship songs in the car too. I feel like God protects me and my family. After-school church helps me to answer some of the questions I have about God. It's a great chance to talk about God, be with friends and express myself. From after-school church, I have learned about being generous, praising God, giving God our hearts, and about God's forgiveness. I like being with my family and the activities are fun.
I was fortunate enough to complete my work experience at Bluecoat Primary Academy. It was powerful to see the church youth workers, school youth workers, and teachers work hand in hand to allow children and young people in our community to encounter God.
At Bluecoat Asby Academy, our partnership with our local churches works a little differently. The church next door to our school runs a drop-in session for years 7 to 11. When the school bell rings at the end of the day, many of us head straight to the church. Our school Christian youth worker is often on the steps of the church, along with the church leaders to greet us. The church youth workers are in school a lot, so we know them well. I won't lie, the food and video games were a real pull at the beginning, but it has grown into something so much more than a youth club. It is a safe place, a sanctuary. The youth leaders are always really helpful and always willing to listen. I have seen so many students meet new people and come to faith in Jesus, and I've even seen people experience healing when they have asked for prayer from the youth workers.
It went from having a few students visiting after school for 5 minutes to now having hundreds of students still in the church when they need to close. The school and church partnership has shown us what it is to flourish, to put God first, and to know that we have a place in our church. I now attend youth church, Sunday morning services, and youth gospel nights.
In 1870, a toll bridge was built across the River Trent, joining the agricultural village of Wilford with the more heavily populated Meadows area. In 2000, a project group was set up to develop a distinctively Christian school that would serve both communities. We are the product of these projects. We are the product of these connections. We are the product of breaking down barriers. And watch us soar. See how we flourish. I recently moved from a community secondary school to a Church of England sixth form. Moving to Nottingham Emmanuel School meant that I came from a place where I had maybe one Christian friend to now having too many to count. Our meetings with church leaders on a Thursday have been a helpful check-in with Christian friends to see how we're getting on in our lives and in our faith. We share our experiences, both high and low, all with the backdrop of prayer for each other and from the leaders. This link with more mature Christians has been a helpful base for us to learn more about God and share what God is revealing to us at that moment. The acts of worship, rooted in Scripture, inspire me to think about how my faith can be applied to my life. I've experienced a year of change moving from Derby to West Bridgford, but now I can see, through it all, I had God's guiding hand right there to point me in the right direction, so I could land somewhere where I'm supported and with a growing faith and friendship and relationship with God.
Our school and church partnership has been fundamental for not only my personal faith journey, but also has made a huge impact on the school as a whole. Having open spaces to worship and to pray across the week has deepened my desire to put Jesus first and has opened my eyes to the fact that Jesus is with me even in the everyday. The impact of our school and church connection has supported and encouraged me to seek the kingdom of God above all else. Not only have I grown my confidence in sharing God's word,
and praying for others, but it has been significant to learn from other people who are on the same path as me, allowing us all to flourish. Our church and school partnership encourages me to keep chasing after God with the gifts that I have been given, which has strengthened me to keep seeking and trusting in God as He gives me strength. God isn't bound by specific environments, but wants to meet with His children wherever we are.
We are asking for a seat at the table. We deserve a seat at the table. We're worried if we don't have a seat, then we might become just the menu. We are young, we are Christian, and we thank you for giving us a voice.
Children.
Look at that. Fantastic.
Synod. Synod isn't bound by any space either, and I've been asked by the press gallery to make sure we have a big smiley moment up there to celebrate, and that includes us, so everybody, smiley smile. Oh, we're being waved. There he is. Wonderful. Thank you, children.
Can you stay there? Oh, that'd be lovely. I have to present in my name a motion, and I'd like to do it with you right behind me. Is that all right? So much to receive from the voice, experience, and giftedness of our children and young people. But it's so important that we don't simply hear it and receive, but then act. Have our imagination of old problems, old challenges, where we're stuck. Have our lives informed and enriched and perhaps put out of joint slightly by perspectives that young people and children bring to us. In Portsmouth, I spend quite a lot of time thinking about a story in John's Gospel where a little boy is looking at Jesus while all the adults are looking at the problem. Jesus has said, feed this crowd, a bigger crowd than this. And the adults, particularly Andrew, are looking at the problem and their knees are shaking. But the little one, the child in the story, is clearly looking at Jesus and offers what he can. And Jesus always receives what children, and those who are so often left out of our perspective, offer. And perhaps you know the story. The adults looking at the scale of the challenge, the child looking to Jesus, shares what he has. Jesus has room for this child's offering. Adults, we need to learn and learn again. And in this synod, we have been learning again to create space for difference, for learning from those unlike us, with perspectives coming from a different place. And as we create that space, so we are enriched by the Holy Spirit and by the presence of Jesus himself. So, Synod, we now need to organise. We need to get serious about delivery. It is complex in how we enable the voices of children and young people and young adults to inform our thinking, to reshape our imagination. But we are so committed to that work. In passing this motion, we will commit ourselves to a long-term, savvy, regular and systematic engagement with the voice of children and young people. We will be doing what Jesus does, not only receiving us, all that we are, all that we might be, but taking that and blessing others, acting upon it. We've listened to these young people's voices, and perhaps we could thank them again in a customary way.
Bishop.
Synod, there is much work for us to do, but I commend to you the motion standing in my name and ask you, in my name, and ask you to support it wholeheartedly. Thank you. Well done. Well done.
Marvellous. So we can assume that item 26 was concluded and that you have just spoken to and moved item 27, which is on this order paper today. So item 27 is now open for debate with a speech limit of 5 minutes. I wish to call, first of all, Sam Wilson, followed by Shamara Fletcher-Hoyt. Thank you. 5 minutes speech limit, please.
Sam Wilson, Chester 282. I'm going to find it so hard to stay within 5 minutes. I promise I will. Thank you so much. That was really brilliant. And it was so lovely to have you here in the chamber. I had written a speech, but this is going to sound rambly. I loved all of that. I loved the films, I loved the surveys, but most especially, I loved you being actually here and being able to see you and being able to know how deeply you felt about the things you were talking about. And so I do support this motion, but I desperately, desperately want you here all the time. Because there will be things, issues, that we won't even think to come and ask you to talk about. There will be things that we have decided that we know what we're doing. And I want you in the chamber to be able to laugh at us when we do that, to call us out on it, to be the loud, brash voice when you need to be, but I'm sure sometimes also to be the quiet, calm voice when you need to be. I desperately, desperately want you in this chamber. But also, I want you in every other part of the church too, because our church is like really complex and annoyingly complex, and sometimes that means that different groups don't speak to other parts of the church. And so I really want young people, Synod, I really, really want young people in all parts of our church. I want us to go back to our diocese, as we said we would do a year ago, and get them involved. You know, what have we done ourselves since last year? And when it comes to the elections for Synod, do we need to give up our seat for someone younger than us? And I include myself in that, just by the way. So I'm really grateful for everyone who made today happen. I'm so grateful for the authenticity. I'm a youth worker, that's what I do every day. I work with 11 to 18-year-olds in a church in South Manchester. And I love the authenticity of your voice. And Synod, I think if you ever need, I don't know, there's many clergy in this room. Over the last couple of years, I've ended up preaching a little bit more than I ever thought I would. And sometimes people are rubbish at giving feedback. Do you feel that one? You come out of church and someone goes, oh, that was great. And you're like, cool. But you want a little bit more. And one of the things I love about my youth work is I know absolutely instantly when I'm being terrible. So I'm really grateful that we have all of you here today. And I'm really, really hoping that this motion is step one. We keep going. That we don't just stop. I said that, last year when we had our motion last July, we're very good at putting young people on the front of church report brochures. And it can't just be that. Thank you so much.
After our next speaker, I call Sarah Batts-Neal, followed by Kenson Lee. Thank you. After the next speaker, I think we'll move to 3 minutes so that we can hear as many of you as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Shamara Fletcher-Hoyt, Ecumenical Representative, number 481. And this is my maiden speech. Yay. Good afternoon, Synod. I stand before you today as a guest ecumenical observer, wholeheartedly supporting your motion to grow younger and more diverse by hearing and responding to the voices of young people. This motion is not just about securing the future of your church, but ensuring it thrives today. As someone who has directly benefited from continuous belief, trust, and investment in young adult leadership within the church and the ecumenical landscape from the age of 16, I can attest to the profound impact this support and investment can have. At the age of 27, I was appointed as the youngest ever national principal officer at Churches Together in England. This pivotal role in my formation afforded me opportunities beyond my imagination, including the immense honour of reading at the late Queen Elizabeth II's funeral in front of an estimated 4.1 billion people. I say this not to boast, but because investment in the next generation matters. It is not only essential for succession planning, but also because our voices matter and significantly contribute to the life and vitality of the church. We must recognize and embrace this. We know the saying, proper planning prevents poor performance. Investing in your young people is an integral part of that planning. Theologically, we see numerous biblical examples of the importance of investing in the next generation. Consider Paul and Timothy, Elijah and Elisha, where mentorship and investment yielded fruitful results. Conversely, look at the negative example of David and Saul, where Saul loved the idea of David and his gift, but tried to suppress his call, leading to intergenerational envy and turmoil. The church must be intentional in the investment to ensure that the kingdom is built upon. Most importantly, that the gems and lessons that are in your generation are not lost, but carried forward with wisdom and grace. I love a famous saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. To actualize the vision of a younger and more diverse church, young adults should be embedded in the very culture of decision-making processes and the business of your synod. It's crucial for young adults to see themselves reflected in these spaces and to know that their views are not just heard, but valued and taken seriously as they also reflect the heart of God. I'm deeply thankful for the elder generation and mentors who took the time to invest in me and who made radical changes to the culture so that young adults like myself could flourish. As a result, we are now seeing an increasing number of young adults engaging in ecumenism, viewing it not as a retirement plan or activity, but as a vibrant and essential part of their lives and ministry today. So finally, I look forward to seeing the fruit produced by the commitment to include young adults in your synodal processes. The leaders you will raise, equip, and prepare to take the Church of England forward will be a testament to your dedication to this motion. And I encourage you to be the generation that ensures the legacy of faith, wisdom, and service continues robustly into the future. Thank you for your time, your commitment, and your willingness to invest in those who will lead you forward. Thank you.
After Kenson Lee, I'll call Emily Hill, who I believe is our youngest synod member. I'm definitely looking for maiden speeches and those who haven't spoken during this group of sessions, so give me a wave when you next indicate. Thank you.
Sarah Batts-Neal, Chelmsford 80. Thank you to all the young people who are here today, echoing the thanks we've had already. It's been fabulous to hear from you. I know there will have been a lot of work put into preparing for your presence today, and we are super grateful for that. There's just 2 points I want to raise, and having offered my thanks, they're going to sound a little bit negative. It's not at you, okay? The first one is, during the first part of the presentation, I and some others were sitting thinking, we're hearing young voices, but are these young people's words? Or are we hearing a presentation written by somebody else? It would be interesting to know whether that is the case. And I am concerned that there could perhaps be a level of over-management of this process, that we are not actually open to the movement of the Spirit in the voice of a young person who is not part of a process, who hasn't been prepared to the last minute, but is actually willing to speak and able to speak in the moment. That risk, surprise and challenge that I think those people who are youth workers and get that feedback will have been talking about. And secondly, and I think I'm contractually obliged to say this as I work as a university chaplain in an institution without a religious foundation, you have spoken of the ongoing work that will happen. Is there a plan or an expectation that you will include that network of university chaplains who can reach young people whose voices are not front and centre in the Church of England at the moment? Thank you again for being here. It's been great to hear from you. Thank you.
After Emily Hill, can you give me a wave if yours is a maiden speech? Oh, so many, marvellous. And gentleman in the green T-shirt still waving there, thank you. We are at 3-minute speech limits from here, thank you.
Sorry, is mine's 3 or 5? 3, okay.
3, thank you.
Okay, Kenton Lee, 493. Thank you, Chair, for calling me. Synod, the first time I ever spoke in this hall 2 years ago, I was 25. And I'm shocked to say that after careful calculation, I find myself now 27. Synod, I'm not getting any younger. And I'm quite disappointed to say that the progress to include young people in this chamber has been slow. But please don't take what I'm about to say as diminishing the amazing achievement we've just seen. But as a comment from a critical friend, I take 2 issues in particular with this paper. The first, it didn't show me that it takes seriously what it means to engage with children and young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, from ethnic minority backgrounds, from neurodivergent backgrounds, or other forms of disability. It's in the title. Hearing young people is itself an assumption. Moreover, the proposal is quite heavily reliant on school engagement, which is only one of the contexts which children and young people can be found. I recently attended a choral evensong at Peterborough Cathedral, and I was so utterly impressed by how diverse and young the choir was. How can they be involved in the life of the church beyond offering heavenly music? How do we hear their voices in topics such as what we've just debated yesterday? Secondly, last year, we voted, and I quote, to establish Church of England Youth Synod or similar, and to arrange for the co-option of 5 young adults to be elected by Youth Synod as member of General Synod with speech and voting rights. It has already been a year since we voted to adopt that as our policy. I've not seen a route map yet, and we know we like our route maps here. Synod, you co-opted me 2 years ago because you realized that the voice of global majority heritage people is lacking in this room. I hope I've shown you what I have to offer and what a voice you would have had lost had you not co-opted me. Sorry, it's a bit of both. I want the Synod, sorry, I'm finishing. I want the Synod, how many more young voices that we desperately need to hear, like we've just done today, we are not hearing because we've not given them the chance. I would be voting in favour, of course, of this motion, but to achieve our vision to be a younger and more diverse church, this proposal, unfortunately, is not bold or humble enough. We can do better. Thank you, Synod.
After gentleman in the green T-shirt, we haven't had a bishop yet, so Bishop Rose, we are still at 3 minutes. Thank you.
Emily Hill, Hereford 322. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this report, but I also would like to be a critical friend and raise some concerns. As part of our mission, we are called to grow younger and more diverse, but in order to attract and keep young people, we need to recognise that we or they are not trophies to be brought out and paraded. Yes, we want to hear the voices of children and young people, of course we do. And thank you to those of you that joined us in chamber today. It was really lovely to see you and hear you. But this shouldn't be about us. We need to ensure that by providing them with a platform, they are as equally benefited as us. They need to gain something and be enriched by this agenda proposed. I hope that this detailed schedule is not so micromanaged that we lose sight of why we are doing this in the first place. Instead, I hope and urge that this detailed schedule is more a testament of the attention to detail behind this commitment and not a way of ensuring young people are limited and asked to conform. Please only let this be the tip of the iceberg for our future engagement with children and young people as a result of Sam's PMM last year. Can I ask a question too, please? Of the statistics in the first presentation, what percentage of those children and young people who answered those questions were already church attendants, and how many were children and young people who do not already have faith? I also echo Kenson's plea to recognise that people can fall into multiple categories of diverseness, if you will. Please don't allow this to be so managed that you exclude the voices of young, neurodiverse or disabled people and to who strict agendas may not be possible. They have a young voice too and are equally deserving to be heard. That being said, the issues I have raised are for those coordinating this motion, and so I would please ask Synod to support it. It's important that we engage.
After Bishop Rose, can I invite the lady in the blue stripy shirt? Thank you.
Dan Leathers, 153 Liverpool. This is my maiden speech. I was given that voice. In 2008 was my first York Synod as a General Synod representative for the Church of England Youth Council. It was an incredible experience. It was a difficult debate, but overall it was really positive the way that I saw our church do business even in difficult times. As a 19-year-old youth representative, I had the opportunity to address the Synod, and I spoke on the climate change bill, particularly encouraging moving from fossil fuels to renewable resources. And I made the point to Synod that the decisions that are made in this House, or in this Synod, have repercussions for the future. There is an inheritance of our young people who take on the church. Having a voice at the Synod at the young age meant so much to all those that I represented, both on the Church of England Youth Council, but also I was chairing the Darson Youth Council of Derby Diocese at the time. That experience has inspired me to commit my life to young people. Now as an ordained minister, youth ministry is top of the priority of what we do in St Mark's, where I'm from. The passage that really lived with me, but particularly because it was what we looked at as the Youth Council regularly, was 1 Timothy 4:12. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. Because the church I was born into and to which I have committed the rest of my life and ordained ministry, because that church listened to me as a young person, it's equipped me to listen deeply to all young people. I had the opportunity recently I just rearranged our schedule. Our young people, for the first time since I arrived, said, we're ready to lead a youth service. So I spent some time with them just in one Sunday morning session, just exploring what it looks like to lead a service. And, you know, they gave me some really helpful feedback, really good feedback, encouraging feedback about our services. They also gave me a number of uncomfortable home truths, including, one of the key things was, don't speak down to us. Don't try to get to our level. Speak to us on an equal footing. And I heard myself saying the same thing to my dad and the leaders of the church I was in at that age. And particularly youth work in every parish where that is possible. We need to make it possible. We have a very messy Wednesday night youth group every week. We've been doing it for 3 years. We've seen young people's lives changed and transformed. And what they come back for is love each and every time. So I just speak in support of this motion. We need you at our table. Synod, support this motion.
After the lady in the blue shirt, I call maiden speech. Give me a wave. Charlie Bell, thank you. And after that, I'm going to have to test the mind of Synod on a motion for closure. But we'll see how we go. Thank you.
Rose Hudson-Wilkin, 43, Bishop of Dover. Last week, Sunday, I confirmed a young man who told me that the year before he had attended a confirmation service that I did, and he was very moved by what he heard, what he saw, that he started going to church, and of course came for his own confirmation last week, Sunday. In the last few years that I have been in my diocese, I have confirmed over 600 people, young people as well, within that batch, significant numbers of young people. And one of the things that I do in particular with the young people is that I plant a seed with them. I say to them, one of you here, maybe 2 or 3, will be called by God to serve the church. And I often see the little girls looking at me a little bit, is she talking to me? And so I immediately say, oh yes, I'm a girl. The hair might be short, but I'm a girl, so I am addressing the girls in the room, that God might be calling you. And as the last speaker says, take hold of that boldly. You have been an inspiration. Thank you for being here. In your presentation, you spoke about inviting your friends. You are terrific at doing that. You are a great example to the adults to speak freely about God. So I want to encourage you to keep going. I preached my first sermon when I was 14. So you can do that too. Let's create spaces in our churches so that our young people can flourish as children of God. A question that I'm always asked by the young people when I go around to schools is, what do you enjoy most about being a bishop? And I tell them that I like going to schools and talking with young people, etc., etc. And they always say, what do you not enjoy? And I say, are you really wanting to know? And their little heads are bobbing up and down. And I say, the adults who behave like children. I say that. Children, you were terrific. Great example. Thank you for being here. And thank you for your gift to us. Thank you.
Billy Joe O'Leary, Rochester 388.
Thank you so much for your passion and your enthusiasm to be with us today. I'm here to apologise because when I was voted to be here, I didn't have the same passion and enthusiasm about coming here because I questioned why on earth and what on earth am I coming here to do. And I have waited 2 years longer in the discernment process for Christ to answer that. This is why I'm here. I am passionate to the core about intergenerational mission, the church, wide, inclusive, diverse, beautiful in all of its array, in all of its ages, in all of its capabilities and abilities, and in all that it does at grassroots. And you are a beautiful demonstration of a generation that is doing that well, that we have to learn from. So thank you for being with us today. Intergenerational mission. Let me talk to you about a 5-year-old girl who, unlike Bishop Rose, gave her first sermon to a 27-year-old woman after Sunday lunch, my daughter. 5 years old, she challenged me into the kingdom. That autumn, I went on Alpha and at 27-year-old, encountered Jesus. At 37, the Bishop of Rochester at the time licensed me as the youngest licensed lay minister in our diocese. 37 years old, and that grieved me massively. How could that be? That I was in love with this beautiful, beautiful establishment, my home, the church, and there were no younger lay ministers than me. It hurt. I was pipped to the post a year later by a 36-year-old. But here I am, here we are. Thank you so much. But equally, I speak to the business committee. Why are we the last part of business? Please hear me. This should be the first call of business and the last call of business at every synod. And if you don't like my voice and hearing me on this, sorry, you've got 3 years to kick me out. I don't know if I'll go again, but here's going. And to you young people, I'm really sorry. Because the business agenda came out too late, I'm now late for my train. At 8 minutes past 2, I need to be on a train. Not all of General Synod is here and represented here because we've had to go home on trains that have been booked before business. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. If you are able to be disciplined enough for 2-minute speeches, I will call 2 final ones before we go because we have timed business. It seems only fair that the business committee should have an opportunity to respond, so I call the chair of the business committee, and finally, anyone who hasn't spoken in these sessions, please give me a wave. Yes, lady at the front, thank you.
Charlie Bell, Southwark 221. Forgive my sore voice. I'm claiming it's a cold, but I think it was the bar. It's a great delight to address Synod on a matter of hope rather than on a matter of distress, which has been the theme for so much of this Synod. It was particularly good to hear the actual voices, the actual words of young people during the presentation. And frankly, it was good to see young people talking to us and talking about themselves and not merely being used as weapons in our ongoing fights with one another. Children and young people are our present. That is a truism. It's obvious. And yet in places where they are not our present, this is not an urgent matter, this is an emergency. It is time for the Church of England and for all of us to start treating it as such. This church is called to be younger and more diverse, not because that makes us look better, but because it allows us to actually be the church. The more diverse and the more representative of everybody in this country that we can be, the more likely we are to be able to live out the call of Jesus Christ. And youth, children and families ministry is just as diverse as our young people. And it is ministry and not merely evangelism. So some of that ministry will take place in our churches. In my context at St John the Divine in Kennington, we have the most fabulous music. And our children are at the centre of that fabulous music. Without them, our church simply would not operate in the way that it does. Children are so receptive to the call of the sacraments. Children are so receptive to the scriptures soaking into them. When I was a choir boy in Chichester, I heard those psalms and those readings every day, and I can still pretty much mouth every word of evening prayer psalms. Now, I can't do the morning prayer because we didn't sing those ones. Living their faith as young people means living their faith in everyday life. And our commitment to children and young people cannot stop at the church or the school door. Our young people continue to face challenges. They face discrimination of all kinds. They face racism. They face queerphobia. They face classism. They face ableism. And too many of the children in this country remain in poverty, as we have heard about in our earlier debates. So we must engage in and value ministry for and with children outside the church and outside the school and into wider society, challenging those unjust structures, because that is part and parcel of what ministry is. We need, of course, to get our own house in order before we can speak with a properly prophetic voice. But, my dear friends, let us be a church that sees the Christian life as involving all of God's people, and let us continue to consider all of God's people in the whole and in the round. This is linked to everything that we do, and we can and will do better if we walk along the road with people like you.
Thank you. So, I think it was the other way around, so you can have the final word. I'll be putting a motion for closure and a reminder to you both that there are 2 minutes and don't feel obliged to use all of them.
2. Robert Hammond, Chelmsford 273. I chair the Business Committee, which is the committee that sets the agenda for this meeting. Just a point on timing. Timing was difficult to slot this spot in because we needed to find a time when the young people could be with us. And because we meet over a weekend, that was going to be a challenge. So I'm sorry that it's at the end. It was the best time to enable the maximum number of young people to actually be with us. The Business Committee will absolutely support the voice of young people into our debates. I don't want that voice to be on the menu. I want that voice to be around the table so that we can incorporate that view into what we hear and what we debate. I'm not sure how much of a voice we'd get for a chancellor liability, as an example, but that doesn't matter. And to some extent, I want to see what we can do with the education department to offer almost a challenge to the NCIs and indeed to people putting down private members' motions and diocesan synod motions. Where in what you write, where in your background papers have you put the voice of young people in? It's not just for the education department to do that, it's for us to do that. We've got to put that work in. I'd love to find a way that a challenge almost to the Business Committee as well. If we don't see that voice in that preparation material that we get when we're putting the agenda together, it stands less chance of being debated. Chancellor liability excluding. What I promise you is that we will have this as a substantive item on our next Business Committee meeting. We'll look at some of the things that I've said. We will invite some views from the Education Department on this. And very lastly, I said we use presentations in different ways because they can bring different views to Synod, and haven't we heard that today?
Debbie Sellin, Peterborough 31. Thank you for calling me. This is my maiden speech. And I wanted to highlight and to say thank you so much to our church schools for the way in which they are helping children explore faith and spirituality and giving them language to do so. I was privileged in one case to witness a SIAMS review taking place in a school where I was chair of governors. A small group of 8-year-olds were meeting the inspector, and they were asked to explain what made up the Trinity. They were able to say Father, Son, and Spirit. The head teacher took a risk. She had no idea what the children were going to say, but she felt moved to push them further. Can you tell the inspector something more about who the Spirit is? One spoke up. I've seen the Spirit. Me too, said another, floating above us, gold and shiny, giving us strength and helping us. These children had not been coached. They were not part of church families, and this came from their hearts. Thank you for talking about partnership between churches and schools, because I have the strong conviction that we need to learn from one another. We need to learn from our schools, who are encouraging children to be curious, to ask big questions, and giving them confidence to think for themselves. As we partner together, as we learn from together, that is how we are going to create this soil for the environment that allows faith to grow and be established. I support this motion.
Thank you. I now put a motion for closure, because there is somebody with their hand up on Zoom. So I put a motion for closure on this item. Those in favour, please show. Green ticks also. Those against, please show. Motion for closure is carried. So I now invite the Bishop to come and respond to the debate. He has point of order.
Matt Beer, Lichfield 143. Chair, I don't know if this is a point of order, but I'd like to find out if that maybe before the Bishop of Portsmouth reflects back on the debate, if the young people would like to respond, that they might have the first opportunity.
We have timed business, so I don't want to do anything. I'm a little demob happy, so inclined to agree, but I better just take advice before I do.
I just want to say thank you for listening to us and giving us an opportunity, and that only going forward can we have this opportunity to have dialogue together. Thank you.
So apologies to the lawyers in the back room who are now having kittens, but please go ahead, Bishop. Thank you. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Synod, for your responses. All heard, noted, and a provocation to new work. But I want simply to say, we hear you and we value you. I move the motion standing in my name. Thank you.
Synod, we now put item 27 to the vote. Those in favour of item 7, please show, and green ticks. This is a count of whole Synod. Those against, please show red ticks on Zoom. The motion is carried. That concludes this item. Thank you.